17, page 88.
Thank you.
You'll have to repeat that because the people listening to recordings won't understand that.
Right.
Anyway, hello everybody. This is Nannette Kennedy with Humanities Team and the Evolution Revolution, and it's August 1st. Can't believe June and July are already behind us, but they are. And we are reading The Only Thing That Matters by Neale Walsch, and Lynda's going to read to us and get us centered for where we are in the book.
Okay, folks. Well, sorry I missed last week, but Mary did a great job. So we're on chapter 17, Putting It All Together, which starts on page 88. But what I thought I would do is just go back and remind us of the soul knowing that was one of the last things out of the last chapter. The soul knowing is all fear is but a distorted form of love. So chapter 17, Putting It All Together. And I'm gonna just stop my video so we can be sure we have a clean feed. God may not punish confusion, but God does punish disobedience. It's one thing to say you just didn't know, but it's another thing to be told outright what is so and then completely ignore it. Good Lord, how applicable to today's world. You may have heard those words before. They spell out the fundamental principle, the foundational basis of most of the world's major religions. If you've read this far in this book and embraced its ideas, you're in deep trouble. These belief systems will tell you. They tell you that God and life are not one, but that God created life, and that man is a part of life in God's image and likeness, but that image and likeness, or not, man cannot become God and must not attempt to be God, lest man commit the greatest sin, for which condemnation is eternal damnation, is, absolutely and without a doubt, the punishment. These belief systems teach you, was the great sin of Satan, and it is the sin that Satan is trying to get us to commit, so that we will join him in perdition. Satan is doing this apparently to get back at God for sending him to that awful place. Satan wants to rob God of his souls by claiming them as Satan's own, so that he can punish God for himself having been punished. You may have heard commentaries such as this regarding the doctrines of some organized religions before. But it may be useful now to look beneath the dogma to what generated the idea of right and wrong, good and evil in those doctrines in the first place. The dogma surrounding sin is based on the theological doctrine of separation. That doctrine must be held firmly in place, or the construct of sin dissolves. Religions understand this. That is why many religions teach that God is over there and man is over here, and never the two shall meet, except on Judgment Day, when, even though you are not supposed to try to be God, you will in fact be judged on how much like God you have behaved. The soul knowing. Life invites you always to live the life that you were designed to live. Humans are told to be like God, but that they have to do so without being God. They are told that they are made in the image and likeness of God, but they do not have the abilities of God. So they are consigned to failure before they begin in this business of being as much like God as they can be. Still, God will forgive them for their failures if they will try. But if they do not try, or if they try but fail miserably and in the worst possible way, God will judge them, condemn them, and punish them to everlasting torture and pain. This is human theology, most of it, in a nutshell. There are variations on the theme, but that is the gist of it. There's no point in going any further with this. Hundreds of other books have been written on the subject. But now, consider this. If separation from God is not the ultimate reality, if God's revealed identity as that which created life, but which is other than life, is not the true state of things, then the basis of most human theologies is faulty. Their doctrines crumble. Should humanity choose to lay aside the doctrine of separation, life on earth could be lived according to a new theology in a new way, not as an attempt to get back to God in heaven, but to get back to creating heaven on earth, not as an effort to make sure we are not excluded from God's kingdom, but as an effort to make sure that God's kingdom is not excluded from us, and to make sure that this whole place called earth is treated as part of that kingdom. Ironically, this would be achieved by us being as much like God as we can be. So here is the supreme irony. First, we are told that Satan was punished for thinking he was divine. Then we are told that we were made in the image and likeness of God, and that we will be punished if we do not behave in a godly fashion. The theology of our ancestors has us coming and going, and the human species is now facing a future creating choice. Old theology or new theology, yesterday's God or tomorrow's God. The second choice offers life's most tantalizing enticement ever, to live the life you were designed to live, to experience yourself in your truest form, to express the essence of who you really are in the next grandest way. This is not something that is outside the capability of humans. Regular people, just like you, have done this. Remember, what is being talked about here is expressing divinity in the grandest way, and that is an ongoing, expanding process. The good news is that even expressing a tiny portion of divinity can change one's life so dramatically that struggle and suffering, anxiety and worry, fear and anger, grief and misery can be removed from one's daily encounters forever. Completion of the entire process of divine experience through expression in the realm of the physical is impossible due to the limitation of physicality itself, a point made in chapter 14, discussing the finite nature of our lives. Yet in the totality of the three-part kingdom of God, the realm of physicality, plus the realm of the spirituality, plus the realm of pure being, the totality of divinity can be known, expressed, and experienced by the totality of you. This impossibility of completion of the sacred journey in its entirety during one physical lifetime is what standard theology has correctly understood but incorrectly taught. It has attempted in good faith to teach it, but it has done so in an inaccurate and damaging way. It has done so by sharing a dogma of doctrine of separation from God, rather than by sharing as a celebration the truth of the magnificence of God. A soul knowing. It is because we are all united with a divinity so utterly magnificent and limitless that we need more than one lifetime to experience it. I'm going to read that again. It is because we are all united with a divinity so utterly magnificent and limitless that we need more than one lifetime to experience it. It is because we are all united with a divinity so magnificent and limited that we need more than one lifetime to experience it. It is not because all things physical are separate from God, but exactly the opposite. As we've already explained, using our stage play illustration, it may take many passes through a single lifetime, sometime producing, as we discussed a bit ago, the experience of déjà vu, and passages through hundreds of separate lifetimes. Does reincarnation sound familiar? For a soul to be completely complete. All of which brings us back down to you, the individual expression of the divine that is undertaking this exploration by reading this book right now. What does any of this have to do with helping you to focus on this day of your life, on the only thing that matters? Well, we have made the point from the outset that it's important to understand how something works before you can understand why it is not working. The narrative here has been leading you step by step through the blueprint of life, reminding your mind of what your soul knows about how things were designed to work. In summary, then, here is that data condensed. The grand design is this: God created physicality as a means by which to express its totality in relative terms, so that it might experience divinity in all of its aspects. The human blueprint of physical human life is this: you are a three-part being made up of body, mind, and soul. There is no separation within this triad, which has been called the totality of you. The totality of you is, in fact, an individuation of divinity itself, even as divinity is a triune, being, knowing, experiencing. So too are you, soul, mind, and body. You are, just as it has been said in many theological circles, made in the image and likeness of God. The agenda of the soul is this: to express and experience every aspect of its true identity as an individuation of divinity by reaching completion of the sacred journey in moment-to-moment expressions of life, to collaboratively create with other souls the right and perfect conditions, situations, and circumstances within which it becomes possible to experience this. The sacred journey is this: an ongoing, eternal expression by the soul of the essential or primal energy called life, in specific and particular forms, fulfilling the divine purpose by means of physicalizations, which are referred to in human terms as lifetimes. The divine purpose is this: continual completion. That is, the complete experience of divinity in any and every one of its aspects through the ongoing physical expressions, reflecting the nature of the divine insofar as any physical manifestations is capable of doing so at any particular evolutionary stage. When a flower blooms, divine purpose, the expression and experience of any aspect of divinity, has been fulfilled, and the sacred journey of the life form called flower has reached completion at that stage. It does not reach what would be called total completion, because the life form called flower does not and cannot ever die or go away. Its energy simply changes form, moving to the next stage in its expression and manifestation. When a tree grows to its highest point, ultimately falling of its own weight, divine purpose, the expression and experience of any aspect of divinity, has been fulfilled, and the sacred journey of the life form called tree has reached completion at that stage. It does not reach what would be called total completion, because the life form called tree does not and cannot ever die or go away. Its energy simply changes form, moving to the next stage in its expression and manifestation. When a human being expresses fully divine purpose, the expression and experience of any aspect of divinity has been fulfilled, and the sacred journey of the life form called human has reached completion at that stage. It does not reach what would be called total completion, because the life form called human does not and cannot ever die or go away. When a particular lifespan is over, a human being does exactly the same thing that other life forms do. Its energy changes form, moving to the next stage in its expression and manifestation. Unlike flowers or trees or other less developed biological forms, the life expression called human beings is capable of expressing and experiencing wisdom, specifically the wisdom of the soul, through which, when added to the experience held in the mind, a state of partial completion may be reached many, many times during many moments across one physical lifespan. To finish the moment, to find the journey's end in every step of the road, to live the greatest number of good hours, is wisdom. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Humans have reached a level of awareness that may be the highest of any life form on Earth. We imagine ourselves to be more advanced than dolphins or whales and most other life forms, but this is by no means certain. As explained early on in this exploration, your life form is now reaching a new level of consciousness as a result of the mind now paying much more attention to the awareness of the soul. Even as a primitive human at some point became aware that the reflection seen in the water was the self. Through the process in which you have engaged right here on these pages, you have seen your own reflection and recognized it as yourself. To use the life path metaphor one last time, it is when your mind and your body deviate from the path of the soul that the mind forgets. And the body and the mind are not required to follow the path of the soul, as has been explained, and so can be lured by other attractions. Yet now, expanding on the metaphor, there is a safety device built into this process, a device that guarantees that you will eventually make it safely to the top of the mountain. Like all good mountain climbers, the three parts of the totality of you are tethered. Some spiritual Teachers call this connection a silver cord. The connecting cord is very long, so the mind and the body can stray far, far from the soul before the line becomes taut. It could be said that God has given you plenty of rope. But at some point, that line becomes stretched and tight. It is then that you begin to feel that you are being pulled in 3 different directions. Everyone has experienced this feeling. You may be feeling this way right now. If you are, it is because you have left the path of the soul. Don't worry. You're on your way back to the path. And this time you'll have a map showing you how to stay on the path. Because this time you are going to know about the only thing that matters. End of chapter.
Thank you, Lynda. Who would like to start? Mary?
I just got to say that notion that only humans can have wisdom gets my goat, because like, you know, that's more of a limitation of our ability to understand wisdom. He even goes and talks about dolphins and things after, but what got me was trees don't have wisdom. I'm sorry, trees got wisdom. And if we don't recognize that, that's our limitation. You know, trees have given me Reiki before and stuff. I mean, that's all. And now they're learning more and more about how trees have these networks of roots, some of them that communicate with other trees. And anyway, that's all I had to say. It's like, that's a pretty big assumption that I got a big issue with. But he may have changed because this book was a few years ago. So maybe by now he's realized he was wrong about that. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mary. That bothered me too.
Mary, thanks. I also think to become very focused on how we were conditioned by Christianity, by whatever, and where can we can relieve all this belief and not going to get some new ones just to free ourselves to let space. I think that's for me something very important. Not to take in new definitions just to be open to it and to trust my intuition or whatever I feel, to get the wisdom when I'm standing on a tree and then I just feel it's wisdom. And I think it's a question of how to refine my senses also. I think so much we also haven't used or have lost throughout the years, or we didn't focus on it. Perhaps it was important, but we didn't focus on it. And I think for me, it's always an appeal to say, okay, what do I sense? What do I feel when I'm out in nature on some places, and to really be present? Yes. Thanks. I'm over.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I just think it's kind of ironic because, you know, he writes so much about the limitations of religion and everything. And it's like, it's all about humanity's incomplete models. And then he made his own little mistake there. So we're all sort of human in that. It also, because the other thing I didn't like about it was the focus that reincarnation only involves living human lives, you know? I could totally see myself picking a life as a tree. Anyway, that's all.
Well, it's also, you might have changed his perception, right?
Yeah.
His, learning might be different. Perception might be different now.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
I can say that I was not grown up with religion. I was grown up without any religion, and I didn't have fear of many things. I was very free, and I'm now also very free in my behavior. But then I recognized that the world is teaching me many things. So I came to, it's not, I am grown in ex-Yugoslavia, in socialist country, but it's not that matter because my grandmother in the war, Second World War, was killed his husband. And so after this, he never believed in God. It's not only the condition of living in social country, because we had churches also, is what was not forbidden. But then I, during my life, came to that I have to find God, but of course it's not one lifetime. And my mother always teaching me that God is in the heart, that God is love. So I have a picture of one God, which I don't know, I can see only as a love. But during the life, I only find this, she always told me, realize yourself. So on this way of self-realization, I thought that God is on my way. This is my journey is in this way, living without religion, but in the life, trying to find God as this.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Oh, I did that of I don't know, hell or some other things, but I see that all is on the earth, hell of heaven, all is on the earth. I had no fear, but I found this life not very good experiences.
You looking at the hand?
I could say something.
Oh, please.
It sounds marvelous not to have fear, actually. That sounds like something very positive. And what came to me in this reading is the value of getting older, that the years go by and the experience of life is more, and the potential for development for the God being within us is through us has got more possibility, and the wisdom through the years. And because this has been turned around sort of medically, this kind of flesh and blood and gore and organs and all these separations, like we're this kind of thing, and then you get old and then you're old, and that's another category, and that's another category that devalues the actual life experience, the life experience that can open to divinity, all in unique ways for everybody, which is just absolutely wonderful. So the older, the more years, the more experience, the more opening to what the possibilities are is available through the person. So I feel that's a very nice, because I value, I think people have been valued on how much they've got in the bank. That's another kind of value, but it's no development, and you can't take it with you, as it were. Yeah, that's it. That's kind of where, the value that the possibility of divine value that we can become is we can't put a price on it. It's wonderful, isn't it? Thank you.
I think you brought up some really good points. I know as I get older, I do not have that same feel that I think my grandmother had at my age. I think she thought, well, it's time to just wait to die. And that's not me at all. And I don't know if that's because of the times we were raised in. And, the 60s and 70s were kind of a time of enlightenment, that there was some other way. And I'm not just referring to the crazy use of drugs. But I don't even know what else I was going to say, but if anybody wants to comment that, please feel free.
I just have some thoughts about Anne. She just told us about, also he spoke about age, and we cannot put a price on it. And in the same moment, you talked about not putting a price on the age. I just came in mind from the Aboriginals people also. They also say that we can't, usually people cannot put a price on land or not sell it to anyone. So I think we have to be careful that in a couple of years we are not on also put the price on age. Or to have it, perhaps we can move it in the other way around, that we can say, okay, in a couple of years, nobody ever goes to put the price on the land because it's common goods, it's for everybody, and we cannot, you cannot own land for because you have paid for it. You just have the land you need to live on it, and that's it. Yeah. Over.
Thank you. Got me thinking about that.
Me too. And now I'm thinking about this whole idea of ownership, frankly, like the whole concept, like, and that really is born of fear, right? If we trusted everything to come and go as we need it, we wouldn't feel like we needed to have all this stuff, I think. Anyway, thanks for making me think.
Yeah. Thank you.
But I think that I have more fears now than before in my young age. Now I have fears and don't know what to do with these fears. But not fears for me, I don't know, but for my loved persons. Yes. Not very much. Oh, also for me.
I'm just going to throw this out there just because a long time ago I saw Deepak Chopra on Oprah. and the thing he said, it was the first time I ever saw him, and what he said was the opposite of love is fear, not hate, it's fear. And so that concept really sort of revolutionized my thinking. And so when you feel fear for your loved ones, if you're interested in what I thought, it was just, that's when I would just wrap them up in love, because we don't want to send worry bubbles, packets of worry to the people we love. And so just whenever I feel fear, that's pretty much what I do, is pull out the pink love bubble and beam it. That's all.
And what I understand about fear now is that fear contracts the kidneys, it contracts the kidney energy. So we become hardened, you know, so the flow of the body is disrupted. And the more fear, the more contracted. And the more contracted means life can't happen because things have to flow for things to happen. So to know that love is the other side of fear, and not to engage in thinking. In fact, I've been discovering the kind of amount of fear I have myself, because I got very painful back, and I think, oh, low back, and then I was doing some qigong and the kidney area and stuff, and so I put some patch, for a herbal patch on it to help me, which I don't often use. I haven't used for years, but I felt I needed something. And then I realized, oh gosh, that patch was really to relax me down. So obviously there's a lot of fear around, and we're in it, and we're living in it. So it's affecting us. Everything affects us, especially what we hear. So I don't listen to the radio or the television anymore. So I'm glad to not listen to them. But despite all that, then I had all this fear, which I now see as fear, but I didn't know. I didn't even know. I didn't even know. So it's interesting, isn't it? But to know that fear will make our life contracted, and the flow can't happen, that eventually the flow can't happen. And this brings the death. So the fear takes the life. You think, you know, I find that really beautiful to know. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bima, did you want to say something?
Oh yeah, I can say something, and that was to walk in the forest. I live in the forest. I have said forest around me. And when I walk out there, it's drawing me out every day. I can't stop it. And it's such a peaceful feeling because there is no fear in the trees and in the animals. And it's just, even if when I walk, sometimes there is a deer running and getting in fear when I come, but that is more their survival. It's not in the way as human beings. So I find that chapter, it's very nice to read and to relax into it, because the separation gives stress. And of course, I mean, how many people haven't died before us? So many people have died. You can look at an old house or something and say, oh, those who built that house, they have died. So going back to earth, the nature that is our bodies as well. So when we identify with our bodies, we get into stress. But this is an instrument. I'm not this body. I know I'm not this body, even if this body has responsibility to take care of it. But I am not that body. I know I'm not that body. I am something deeper than that. And if I go into that, I feel peacefulness and relax. And I don't blame anyone. And so it's a very good feeling. I just wanted to share. I find it difficult sometimes to discuss, because I sink into the peaceful inner and I wait for some place where I can say something from that point. When I say this, I feel a smile in my heart. And there is a Swedish singer and artist. His name is Thomas Di Leva. He's famous in many places. He was here close to recently, 2 days ago, and had a concert, and I met him. I know him since 1995. I think I learned to know him. And anyway, he has a song where he sings that, I think it's in Swedish, I'm not sure, that you cannot buy life for money. We cannot buy the life. We cannot buy it. But money has taken over. Life is something that is unfolding naturally. It's not based on money. So that is beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Over.
So some of you have heard me talk about this before, but when we're born, if you go to, you know, a hospital where they've got babies in that room, all the nursery, and you watch the babies breathing, their bellies are what is moving, not their chests, but their stomachs and their lower abdomens. And I'm going to turn my video off because it looks like it's glitchy. But so we are born as belly breathers. But what you'll discover is that, or what I've discovered anyway, in working with people, is that very few people as an adult, when they take a breath, very few people's bellies move. Most people's breaths are stuck in their lungs. And I've done work like in Los, and it also depends on where you are. Like the more densely populated areas that you live, the more difficult it is for you to maintain belly breathing, because you're surrounded by people who are constricted with fear. And so, and that's when you breathe, if you're not breathing down into your belly, it is because your body is constricted with fear. You may not feel fearful at all. You may not even resonate with the idea of it, but it's a fact that if you're not breathing down into your lower abdomen, you're constricted. And it could be caused by something other than fear, but fear is, in most cases, the explanation. So I've done work with groups in Los Angeles where, you know, I'll say, okay, just relax and take a deep breath as far down into your belly as you can, and really pay attention to where your body moves as you're breathing. And then I'll ask the room, okay, how many people's bellies moved? The only people that will ever raise their hand are people who are trained in yoga. I've never had anybody else in that setting raise their hand and say, yeah, my belly moved. Most people, their breath stops in their lungs. It's their chest that's moving. So that's a tool you can use for yourself, right? When you do some breathing, notice where your body's moving. And if it's your chest, you can just realize that, okay, whether I realize it or not, my body is constricted with fear. And then you can work on that. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, that has a lot to do with when I was a few years ago now, I don't remember when, but when I started to do, somebody suggested, probably a therapist or something, that I do breathing exercises and, you know, pay attention to my breath. And when I first started that, I didn't know for years, and I'd probably been doing this my whole life, but I didn't realize it till then, that I was holding my breath all the time. Yeah. Especially when you're not talking to anyone, you live alone or something, you know, you're not going out too much, you know, whatever, when you're alone at home, you're holding your breath a lot. I mean, if you really pay attention, and I never paid attention to that before, but then when you start doing deep breathing exercises and so forth, then you're like, wow, I really hold my breath all the time. Yeah. You know, and why do we do that? Why do we hold our breaths like that? We're nervous, fear. I don't really understand why. I mean, some people do it more than others. If you're more relaxed of a person, you probably don't do that as much. But I think I've been doing that since I was a child. And I'm not sure where that comes from. I'm not sure why some folks do that and some don't.
I discovered the same thing when I was at an event. It was a health-oriented event, and there was like a point where we were all sort of moving around the room together in some way. And the guy who was running the event just turned to me and said, breathe, you're holding your breath. Yeah. And I was like completely unaware that that was the case so much of the time. So back to the fear thing, there was this moment in life a couple years ago, maybe, where I went, maybe it was only a year, no, it was before COVID, so probably like 2 years. I used to be absolutely terrified all the time. Now I'm only pretty scared a lot of the time, like waking up to that thing, that feeling of how much fear there was in my body. And I had no idea. And then I realized I had a lot of anxiety, and that anxiety came from the absolute terror of everything. Like going to mail a package at the post office was when I realized this level of anxiety is probably not normal for what could be a fairly low stress activity. I go there, I give them money, they take my package and mail it. Like, what am I afraid is going to happen? They're going to tell me I'm wrong and I can't do that. It was like a real fear of like stepping out of line in any way whatsoever, and that would result in like certain death somehow. Major ego protective mechanism. So I really relate to what you're saying, Kirsten.
But Mary, you think is it stress too? Like you're just stressful and time in your life, or whatever? I've been doing my whole life though, so I've been stressed.
I think some of it, in my case, I know that I had a trauma happen when I was a child, and that was long before the days when those sorts of things were really talked about. So something traumatic happened that was internalized into my body, and my body totally constricted and contracted. And I lived like that for a long time until I got older and started putting the pieces together, partly in therapy. I didn't go to therapy for the trauma. I went to therapy as a 20-something because I just wanted to feel like I was living my best life. I knew that things were holding me back from fully expressing. So in my case, I think it was definitely trauma related. And I think that probably a lot of us have trauma that we don't even know about or realize, because it comes from before we talked about that stuff. Also, especially older people. Also, I wanted to say on the subject of the breathing, to add to what Lynda said, when I was in my HHP I used to go to, and he made me breathe. I hate it when people tell me to breathe. It's like I was breathing, but he probably told me take some deep breaths, And so I took my deep breaths, and I had studied yoga enough so that my belly moved. And he's like, okay, you've got the belly moving. Now think about bellows. So it's not just the front of your body. When you breathe, it's not just that your belly should move. It's that your whole rib cage should expand, front and back. So the movement, like I was doing belly breathing just with focusing on my belly because I knew that was supposed to move. But my rib cage, like the back of it, was still clenched. So that's been a whole nother level of awareness to notice, is my whole body expanding like bellows when I breathe? So just wanted to throw that in there.
I want to throw something out there to this conversation. I don't know if anybody in the room besides me has ever broken ribs before. But if you've broken a rib, you become acutely aware of your rib cage doing this. And it's quite painful.
Like that.
And the other thing that I was thinking about was when I was in the rehab facility when I broke my hip. Oh, what fun. I can remember having some panic attacks. And I would have my head up, and I felt, this is what I visualized, but looking like I was a fish at the top of the water, trying to come out of the water to get breath, to get the air. And I can remember when a nurse would say, It's okay. It's okay. Now, I did end up having to take medication for that because it was becoming a real problem. But I couldn't breathe and I was in absolute panic. And this had nothing to do with like my cannula, my oxygen. This had absolutely, I just couldn't get the air. And I think that can be really frightening. But I think getting to your point about the belly expanding, when I broke my ribs, that's where I got in the habit of breathing more from the belly to avoid the pain of the breathing with the broken ribs. So I think it's something that can be learned, albeit in many ways. Anyway, that's what I had to say.
I wanted to respond to Kirsten and just say that I mean, I don't know what else it would be other than fear or stress, which is a form of fear. And just to remind you that it's a separate thing, right? You reside within your body. You aren't your body. So your housing has its own ideas and agenda and behaviors that you're living within. And that's where so much of the confusion in the world comes from, right? People not realizing that the housing has its own requirements. And we're not addressing the requirements of the housing, which is mostly to address its fearful response to what life is giving us. Our souls are never afraid, right? I was the most fearless child ever because I was born awake and I knew there was nothing to be afraid of. I knew this was all a play right from the beginning, from day one, which was why I was able to maintain my belly breathing throughout my childhood and throughout my adulthood. I never ceased being a belly breather.
Doesn't it become habit though, Lynda? Like, I think I was doing it from such a young age, and I continued to do it until I became aware of my breathing, my breath. And I started
It's a habit of the body for sure. Sure, it's a habit of your body.
Half of it's paying attention because I just wasn't paying attention.
Exactly.
And then when I don't pay attention to it, I stop, I don't think about it anymore, I start doing it again.
Right, that's because that's the difference between consciousness and being asleep.
Right, that's
basically
what
that's what that is. So,
and that did sort of happen when I started my spiritual, whatever journey, or that's my life. When I started becoming more awake is when that happened.
Right.
And it's about when I joined you all. So it was about, that's when my mom died, 2015.
Right.
But
and so, don't beat yourself up about it either.
Say, okay, I'm not breathing. I've been paying attention to my breathing for the last half an hour and I keep holding my breath.
Right.
I kind of have to get to the root of it, because can it be different things? Can it be different? I'm worrying about something, or something happened, or I have to do something or whatever. I think it's become such a habit for me that I have to just keep reminding myself, Kirsten, breathe. You're not breathing. And say it, Kirsten, breathe.
It's so frustrating. I would think about how I was a baby. I knew how to breathe. Babies know how to breathe. How can I not know how to breathe?
I know.
Really, I had those conversations with myself. I wanted to say something else about the fear that came to me during this conversation, because it all comes from fear. What is stress? Stress is a form of fear. And I think a lot of it in our society, I mean, speaking for my own self and my life during these past 60 years, survival fear has been huge, a financial system that makes merely surviving for many people on this planet incredibly difficult is huge to me in my life. And the other thing that I thought about, as far as how it started so young in childhood, I mean, there's the survivalist fear too, because we were very working class, let's say, but the sexualization of girls and women, I think was very traumatizing for me outside of my actual trauma, because I was terrified. I was terrified of, like, if I put myself out there, I would be perceived in a certain way that could bring harm to me from a
Right.
very young age. I couldn't have articulated that at all, but I recognize now that that's a lot of what my particular terror had to do with. So I wanted to throw that out there because I think that that could play into it for a lot of
Yeah,
women.
true. True. I think. Yeah.
We need to wrap things up.
Okay.
Sometimes we can do this, go on for 15 extra minutes, which I don't mind. But usually on the first Sunday of the month, I do a prayer,
Oh yeah.
prayer call, and I need to get myself ready for that. But does anybody, since Mary always says this when I say this, I'll call on Mary, but then she'll say, does anybody else want to do the closing?
I just said it last time because I read too, and then I didn't want to feel like I was hogging the meeting.
Okay, well, why don't you go ahead and hog this one and close us out for the day.
Okay. So, dear source, universe, life, God, whatever we want to call it, thank you for bringing us here today into this circle to just share our experiences and our understandings that help us all to kind of enlighten ourselves, right? And thank you for giving us the capacity to connect to our own divinity within and without in this circle of other souls who are on this same path together and feeling this sort of spiritual circlehood of connection that helps to remind us that we are all connected, that the world is like one big expression of divinity with all these different little branches, and that we're all a part of the all in all together here. And let's take that awareness with us as we go out into the week and just remember love is the cure, for the fear, the stress, the tightness, the contraction. All of those things melt in the light of the love, the pure love that comes from the divine. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank everybody for being with us again. It was a lovely time, and we will see each other next Sunday at the same time. Love you all.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.
I don't know what's in the chat. Something's in the
Bye.
chat.
Mhm.
Rami.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Very.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone, for a great week ahead. Love and blessings, in case anyone didn't see it.
Okay.
Yes. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Well,
Hand over heart.
And over heart. Yeah.